Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
My name is Josh Sweeney, and welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Prototype Prime, the technology co-working space in Peachtree Corners, for this amazing podcasting booth. We couldn't have done it without you. Thank you. Today's topic is conveying your culture through onboarding. So we're going to talk a little bit about how culture is injected into the onboarding process, as well as some minimum thoughts or minimums that you need to have as part of your onboarding process. So I will point out that this is something that evolves over time. Most people don't just come up with an amazing onboarding process that, changes and adapts per role and injects all of the educations that is needed. It's going to evolve into something that is more thorough as you deliver it. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the first day when somebody comes onto the organization. What I like to do is walk them through a highlight of the organization. We have a slide deck that's put together that is presented, and it talks about the mission, vision, values, their why, understanding the passion, the reason for the company, why we do what we do, all of these types of things. So in the past, this has happened, I've delivered this a few different ways. I've seen it delivered a few different ways and have experienced it. One of the things that I like to do, and an example of a good onboarding, is I joined one organization, and when I came on board with them, the CEO, and this was a smaller, entrepreneur-led company, about 40 people, I believe. The CEO was the one who delivered this. So he delivered the mission, vision, values, and the why. And it really came across in a positive light. One, the CEO is making time for the new onboarding process. Okay. Now, also in an entrepreneurial environment, he is the most passionate person about that company, right? He built it or she built it. And when somebody builds their organization, they're going to have a certain level of passion, they're going to have a certain level of share and information that they want to convey to you as a new employee. So one thing to take note of is if you are going to present this, if you're going to do mission, vision, values, why the organization was there, deliver it in a way that really energizes people, right? If they're not energized about the company at that point, then it's all downhill from there because you get in the minutia of all the other training topics. Now, being delivered by that entrepreneur, by that founder, is the best way that I've seen it done. Now, if you're not an entrepreneur-led company, you're a larger organization, you need to pick somebody with high energy. Who is high energy, that loves the company, loves the culture, and can deliver that to the new employees in order to get them ready, onboarded, and convey that how important that company is and how important the mission, vision, values are and why they exist. Now, a bad example of that, well, we've all fallen into that. One is, just don't do it. So if you're not telling people your mission, vision, values, and you're not onboarding them, that's probably the worst outcome or the worst possible way to go about it. And I think many of you listening, including myself, have been through, the onboarding from a very large chain of restaurants. So, for example, you may have worked in a restaurant as a dishwasher or a server or whatever it might have been, and you all got the let's sit and watch the video routine, right? Somebody put you in a very tight room with not a lot of space and what looked like the oldest TV you've ever seen and still working in existence, and told you to watch these videos. Well, that doesn't really get anybody energized for doing the job. Okay? So there are some minimums that you want to have in place as onboarding procedures, and those minimums really need to convey your company culture. Now, another thing that we like to do is have a solid training plan. Now, I've fallen into this rut many of times, especially at Accor Systems, my CRM consulting firm that I had. And new people would come on board, and it was essentially drinking from the fire hose, right? That's what they said. You threw me in and told me to swim, and there was actually lots of sharks, right? That is not the vibe you want to give people about your company, that you just throw them into the mix and hope they make it. So having a solid training plan is going to be extremely important. Now, I understand that that's difficult. Some large organizations have amazing training plans where you get on board and you're doing 1, 2, and 3 weeks of training before you even touch a computer. Smaller businesses, I see this as much more of a challenge. You're going to want to make sure to get that training plan together. And the training plan doesn't have to be necessarily job specific. I'm starting to find that there's a lot of technology involved. There's a lot of coaching around how the organization is set up, what is important. So in that training plan, you have things to do, things not to do. You can go through, the fact that you use Gmail or Outlook and best habits and, the apps that you use to run your organization. So think of training more broadly than just the role that they're in, but what do they really need to do in order to get productive quickly? Now, another piece of this is the onboarding experience. So how are people delivered their technology? How are they scheduled? What is the feeling when a new employee gets onboarded? So an example of that would be in our organization, you come on, you meet with me, you do the mission, vision, values, why, we do some deep dive. We also go through some training process so that you know what tools we're using. And then we dive into the job role. You're going to get your MacBook Air, MacBook Pro set up at your desk, all of these different things that happen. So we try to give the best onboarding process that we can. And then you have the opposite. I had a contract position at a company for probably a year and a half at one point. I was onboarded at the company. I was shown my amazing desk at very high cubicles. And as I looked around, there was not many other people in that area of the floor that I was on at this Fortune 500. And then I was told that I would get my laptop in about 2 weeks. So have fun at this desk, and we don't allow other devices on the network. So, go find some people that can print some documents for you that you can read through for your role, and we'll eventually get you your laptop and you'll get rolling. Well, I can tell you from that experience, I wasn't very motivated at that point. I may have been motivated when I came on board and said, this is going to be an awesome role. I'm going to learn lots of things. And now stop and hold for 2 weeks. Not the best onboarding experience. So what I want you to think about is, how are you conveying your company culture? How are you getting the feeling across around what you need people to achieve? What is the value of the company? What are we really here for? As well as how are you bringing them up to speed to ensure that that motivation and momentum and that feeling they got from being hired is being maintained throughout the process? Because a lot of this really does come down to feeling, right? You don't want to take away that momentum with a 2-week pause because you don't have your equipment. You want to keep that momentum going. You want to keep that energy going. So just think through all of those processes, as well as how you keep the energy going with your culture and through your onboarding process.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.